Alright, time for a quick update on my budget build on my ZJ. 1997, I bought at the auction for 300 bucks. As you can see, I haven't polished it or done anything to it. I just washed it. That's why I bought it. I bought it on a guess that I could get it running. Long story behind that is, it was at the Copart auction, and it said it did not run. And the reason they said that is because mice had gotten into it and chewed a few wires. So the dash would not display a mileage. So apparently their rules are if you can't display a mileage, you can't say that it runs. Well, the forklift put it on my trailer. I got in with a jump box, started it right up. It's actually the best running Jeep I've ever owned. And I found where the mice had chewed those wires up here in the engine. They chewed about 11 of them out of a bundle of about 50 wires. So I just spliced those back together and everything works again. So, of course, the interior was pretty shot. It was had sat for 2 or 3, at least 3 years, I think, and the mice had gotten into it. So it smelled like ammonia really bad. So I gutted the entire interior. It was tan, which was pretty hideous. And I've got a 5.9 interior from another Jeep that I transplanted after I sterilized and gutted everything. Everything's new in there except for the dash, and I just wiped the dash down and took care of the smell. So, nice new interior up front. 5.9 grill painted to match. I put a Hayden RV transmission cooler. That was a super easy deal. I'm not going to do a video on that because there's a lot of them on YouTube. It was as simple as removing the factory one that was a little teeny one over here behind the grill. And I just took the hose clamps off, kind of bent the leads over, and a little zip ties to connect it to the existing cooler behind it. It's a pretty simple install, actually. And topped off my transmission fluid because it leaks some when you do that. It's ready for the ARB bumper and winch from Engo 9500 that I purchased a while back. Under the hood, I haven't done much in here. I cleaned the cowl. I don't have the wipers or the cowl cover on there. At least that's what I call it. Because this is where mice run. There's always a nest up underneath the dashboard, up in that the air box is right. You can see the corner of it up in there. The dark round circular thing, that's where your air box runs down into the vehicle. There's a screen that goes on over this, but this end is wide open behind there, so the mice go in over there and make a nest all along back here. And pine needles and debris collect in here real heavily. So that's where all your air comes into your vehicle. So that's the first thing I do when I get one of these. I pull that wipers and the cover off there and I hose it all out. There's drains down here in the corners for everything to drain out on both sides. So that's a fairly easy operation. That's the first thing I always do. Rebuilt the ground to the firewall and the ground to the electrical charging system. I ran new leads to the power distribution center, up here to the alternator, down to the starter, because they were corroding and, well, it was tedious, but it was fairly simple to take apart and replace, so eliminated that as a variable altogether. Put a new water pump in down there. You can see the nice shiny new water pump. New thermostat, new housing, or chimney I guess is the right term. And then new upper radiator hose and the lower radiator hose down there. Because while you're in there, it's super easy. I mean, just switch it out. Eliminate that as a problem on the trail. It's kind of basic stuff. I haven't done a tune-up. Your 3 sensors, IAC, your map sensor, and your TPS throttle position sensor are all right there. 12, 6, and 3 o'clock. You just pop this off with this little nut, and there's 1,000 videos on switching those out. Little Torx screwdriver to get in there. Super easy, but they're a big problem as to why vehicles don't run right. 33 1250 tires and wheels, 375 offsets. And what I did in here, this has got a control arm drop bracket kit that I bought. And I haven't run it yet. I'll cover that in a minute in more detail. I thought I could use factory control arms, which the company didn't say one way or the other, but they said factory control arm ride height. So I just bridged the gap and assumed, my mistake. There's a shim that is in that position, the lower where the yellow control arm runs, that is not in the factory setup, but it is on an XJ. So it's the factory XJ control arms would probably work if they were the right length. And so I ended up having to buy aftermarket control arms, which that was the workaround. Save my money on control arms with factory and run the drop kit. Well, ended up I had to buy control arms anyway. I did run the factory upper arm. Transmission drop kit for the crossbar, 1 inch. Keeps your drive angles. And then new control arms, upper and lower in the back. Got adjustable since they're not that much more. I do have a spacer back here to keep it level because I'm going to run a lot of weight in the back of this. These are the springs from the front of the Jeep that you transfer to the back to give you 3.5 inch lift. And then I bought Old Man Emu. I think they're 3.5 inch lift springs for the front. Some new shocks, of course. I didn't change out the brake line in the back, but I put braided brake lines in the front because I need more drop, and the factory would probably pull out of there, so I don't know, they're kind of spaghettied around along with my ABS, so I don't know if I should secure those better or not. If you guys have any comments, throw that in the comments for me. Switching those out was pretty easy. My biggest trick was don't use the little crow's foot or whatever they call that. Open. It's like a box wrench or an open-ended wrench because it'll round out when you go to break off those original brake lines. I used a pair of vice grips real hard on the nut and it broke it free. It was beautiful. It was the easiest break free of a brake line I've ever done. Didn't round anything out. I don't like these quick disconnects because they don't line up right. And I don't like how they break in the middle. I'm going to take that out. I got a set of Rough Country sway bar disconnects that connect at the bottom that I've run on another Jeep. Way better design than this. This is kind of stupid, in my opinion. Anyway, on to the back. Now, one thing I did, because people are going to be riding with me, I wanted the back to be as comfortable as possible. So what I ended up doing was I moved the seating back about 3 inches. So you can see that's kind of an unusual amount of space with the front seats all the way back. So there's a lot of legroom for someone who's 6 feet tall. And you can see down here, right there in front of the green box knife, that's the original mounting location for the seat base, which is now on the inside of this tray from the factory. So you can see that's quite a bit of space I picked up. And the kind of fun part about this, and the dangerous part is, you don't want to be moving seatbelt locations in cars. That's gets into problems if you're in an accident, because the lawyers will look for any reason to get you. So when I move the seat back, the seatbelt receptacles were actually adjustable, and they just pivoted back to accommodate for the seat instead of leaning forward or aiming forward at a angle. Now they're straight up and down. The only problem is that it was hard to get the seatbelt into the receptacle up against the seat, so I got seatbelt extenders, and that worked great. So the funny part is I moved the seat back 3 feet, or 3 inches, and I mean the base and the back, and the seat belts ended up sitting in the same place to the passenger, and the seat belt location in reference to the top mounting point, which is still factory, is the same distance in the back as it is in the front. So that was pretty impressive, I thought, because if you can move the front seats forward and back in an OEM setup and have the seatbelt locations change ever so slightly, and I move the seats back here back 3 inches, and the seatbelts are still lined up correctly to OEM spec, well, that's about all you can ask for, I think. Now, I did lose a little headroom. It's a little more of a stadium seating. I maybe lost 2 inches going up. So you want to figure out who's got longer legs versus longer torso and have them sit in the back. But that's pretty awesome room for the back seat with the front seat all the way back. So I was kind of proud of that. I used 1-inch transmission transfer case drop kit spacers for the back seat to make up the space. And the back, we've got this ready for what's going to be my slide kitchen, which we're going to start working on today. So I have a 36-inch grill that will slide out in a box like a keyboard on a computer station. It'll slide out, and then you'll be able to cook off the back of the Jeep. And I've got some pretty neat design elements that I'm building into that, but we'll show you those later. I want to make sure they work first, because it's still in my head. It's not in reality yet. The tire carrier came off of another Jeep I bought, which was basically scrap. That and the ARB bumper up front. That's about $2,500 in bumpers. And then I've got a tire carrier that I don't think I'm going to use, but I might. That also came on the Jeep that I bought. I paid for that. It was an old beat up Jeep. Basically, I paid for what you'd pay for an ARB bumper. I got the whole Jeep. So that was a pretty good deal. Let's see, what else are we doing? I ran the coax cables for the antennas, which one's a ham radio antenna, the other's the CB antenna. I had somebody install this one time for me before in another Jeep, and I found they pulled out a grommet, if I can get this to focus, in the firewall, or excuse me, the sidewall here behind the washer fluid box. That little grommet, you can look all the way through to the ground right there, and the cables run in. The sun's messing with me here. See, they run in there without pinching them. And then they come out, right? Hold on a second. I lost it. Oh, there it is. They come out right there through the fender. And you just cut a little hole in this boot, which probably isn't the best thing, but it protects the wire from being pinched. And then you can easily run that coax cable around to the inside of your Jeep. And now I've got them sitting here, ready for install. So I think I'm going to put them both here on the passenger side, the CB and then the ham radio. So that is my update so far on the ZJ build. And I've had most of these components for almost 2 years. I've been piecemealing this together because, well, I'm on a budget, and 2, life gets in the way. I bought the tires 2 years ago in 2018, along with the wheels. And then incrementally I bought the control arms, the donor Jeep for the bumpers, front and rear, just incrementally over 2 years. And then it just, you know how life gets away from you and you're like, what am I doing? Just in the grind. And that's the whole reason I want to put this channel together, is I think there's other people out there that are feeling the same thing I am, which is I want to do something more than just wash, rinse, and repeat with my life. And so I've kind of made it a priority to get this thing. In the past 2 months, I lifted it myself in the driveway on these wonderful, sharp, jagged 2-inch rocks. Oh, one thing I did do, and I had the latitude to do this, even though some people may think I didn't. We'll see. Yes, and I got the other Jeeps boxed in here, so I can't really see this that well. When I lifted this, the one reason you put extended control arms on is to minimize axle wrap, which means when you lift the Jeep, it's like a pendulum, the front axle, or excuse me, the rear axle gets pulled forward. And when that happens, it doesn't center in the wheel well. Well, one, it looks bad, and two, it starts to cause geometry problems when you're crawling. And so what I did was I pulled one of the suspension apart to put the lift on. I recentered the axle, so it's dead center in that wheel well, which is technically 1 inch further back than even factory, because even factory, you can see, get this to focus a little bit, you can see it sits further forward than back. And of course, when you lift these Jeeps, that just accentuates that problem. So I did do that. I did measure the drive line in the slip yoke underneath, and I only lost about 3/4 of an inch out of about 4 1/4 inches of the slip yoke. So I still have plenty holding the drive line into the transfer case. So I think we're okay there. Well, this is my update. This is where we're at. The next couple days, I've got to finish putting in a couple of extra suspension bolts into the drop kit, the drop control arm kit. I need to drill a couple 5/16 bolt holes with self-tapping bolts. I got to install those. The front bumper, I've had it aligned at the shop down the street at the dealership. So other than the bumper and those bolt holes, my tabs will be here Monday. It's 4th of July today. And then we're going to make a shakeout round up to the mountains, see if all this stays together. Maybe Monday. Hopefully Monday. Maybe Tuesday. Anyway, that's where we're at right now. This is my attempt at a wheel flare. I didn't have much of a wheel protrusions, so I wanted to start small and cheap. It's definitely within budget. This is like 20 bucks. And I cut the fenders back so that I have a little more wheel travel. And it's flexible. You just screw it on with a screw underneath. A little self-tapping sheet metal screw. Fairly easy. I just got to trim it off up front here. Do the other 3. So that's where we're at. So we'll give you more when there's more to report. Thanks for tuning in.